Sagittarius, life will place you face to face with someone who owes you an "I'm sorry." Sagittarius, have you ever buried a memory so deeply that even its name made you shift your gaze? A moment, a person, a wound, left unresolved not because you were weak, but because life moved on and demanded that you keep up. And so you did. You smiled. You learned. You even healed, or so you thought. But somewhere within, a quiet ache remained, not loud enough to stop you, but deep enough to shape the way you trusted, the way you gave, the way you hoped. This week, from June 12th to 19th, the universe is preparing a sacred encounter. One that may not have been written in your plans, but has always been part of your healing. You are about to stand face to face with someone who changed the course of your life and left without taking responsibility for the mark they made. Not for drama, not for closure in the way movies teach us, but for something more rare and real: emotional justice. This is not just about hearing the words "I'm sorry." It's about reclaiming the parts of your spirit that froze the day those words were withheld. So take a breath and stay with me. If your heart stirs as you hear this, it's because the moment your soul has been waiting for is drawing near. Like, share, and subscribe if this message finds a mirror in your journey, because the signs aren't coming, they're already here. Gate 1: The wound that grew in silence. How Sagittarius carries the unfinished. Sagittarius, most people see your fire, your passion, your honesty, your unstoppable forward motion. But few understand how much you've had to hold in silence. How many times you picked yourself up without demanding answers. How often you let things go not because they deserved grace, but because you refused to let pain define you. You are the sign of expansion, always looking ahead. But even the archer must pause to acknowledge the weight of an unhealed wound, especially the kind that formed not from conflict but from absence. The apology never spoken, the explanation never given, the goodbye that never truly came. This week, life will stir the past in subtle yet profound ways. It might come through a dream, a smell, a song, a sudden name that appears in a text, or a memory that invades your day for no reason. That's not nostalgia. That's soul memory being activated. And for you, Sagittarius, it's time. Time to witness how something you thought was resolved is still quietly shaping your inner world. Let me tell you a story. Matthew, a 53-year-old nurse from Minnesota, told me he hadn't thought about his college friend in decades. She ghosted him after a deep betrayal, and he assumed it was buried. But when she suddenly messaged him on LinkedIn, just a simple "I've thought about you," he was overwhelmed. Not with anger but with grief. He realized he had built years of walls not from hatred, but from unresolved hurt. And in that moment he saw just how far his silence had traveled into his life. Sagittarius, how far has your silence traveled? You may think you've moved on, and in many ways you have. But part of your fire, the spark that once made you trust easily, love loudly, hope fully, may have dimmed, not because you lost it, but because you protected it. This week is about reclaiming that spark. But to do so, the universe may bring you face to face with the one who dimmed it. They may not even realize what they did. Or maybe they knew but didn't have the courage to face it. Either way, a spiritual appointment is forming. Not because you need their validation, you've already proven your strength, but because you deserve to be met, finally, with truth. And the truth is, you were hurt. And no, you didn't make it up. You didn't overreact. You didn't expect too much. You simply loved with the full force of who you are. And it cost you more than anyone ever knew. Sagittarius, your lesson isn't to become colder. It's to remember that being warm-hearted doesn't make you naive. It makes you powerful. This encounter, whenever and however it arrives, is not about punishing the other person. It's about lifting the invisible weight you've carried for too long. The sigh you never exhaled. The tears you held back because you didn't want to seem weak. The words you never spoke because you convinced yourself they wouldn't matter anymore. But they do matter. You matter. And when someone comes into your space, guided by timing not of this world, but by the stars, and offers acknowledgement, even if imperfectly, you'll feel something shift. The wound will not be erased, but it will no longer lead the way. Because Sagittarius, you were never meant to build your future on unspoken pain. You were meant to build it on freedom. And freedom begins by allowing yourself to feel what you once locked away. This week, don't be surprised if you find yourself more emotional than usual, or more reflective. That's not regression. That's readiness. Your soul is preparing. and the universe is creating the conditions for something sacred. Resolution. Not the kind that ties everything up in a pretty bow, but the kind that says, I see you, I know what happened, and I release you. Before this person arrives, whether in physical form, a message, or even a vivid dream, take a moment to write yourself a letter. Address it to the version of you who was hurt and never acknowledged. Tell them what you wish someone had told them. Hold that version of you with the tenderness they deserved back then. Because when the moment comes, and it will come, you will want to stand in your full self, not just your defenses. The apology that's coming may not fix the past, but it may just liberate your future. And that is something worth receiving. Gate to forgiveness without permission. Closing the chapter that still echoes. Sagittarius, when people talk about forgiveness, they often imagine it as a grand moment. Someone standing in front of you with sincere eyes, finally admitting their wrongs. But real forgiveness? The kind that changes you? It doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it comes in the quiet decision to let go for your sake, not theirs. And that's what this week is really about. Yes, the universe may bring someone back into your life. But long before that, something within you has already begun to shift. Because true healing doesn't wait for permission. It begins the moment you decide that your peace is worth more than your pain. Sagittarius, your fire has always been forward-focused. But when something from the past still echoes through your present, a betrayal, a misunderstanding, a moment that never got its ending, it quietly shapes how you move forward. You might not even realize it, but perhaps you've hesitated to trust, or held back your full joy, or questioned your worth in relationships, even though your outer world seems strong. That's not weakness. That's a wound still whispering. And this week, the universe wants to help you write the final page of that old story. Not with blame, but with understanding. Let me tell you about Teresa, a 60-year-old professor from New York. She hadn't spoken to her sister in nearly a decade. The rift was painful, born of inheritance, misunderstanding, and pride. No words were ever exchanged after the fallout. But then one day, Teresa heard her sister had moved back to town. Not to speak, just quietly returned. Instead of waiting for a call, Teresa wrote her sister a letter. Not asking for anything, just releasing everything. All the anger, the grief, the memories. She never received a reply. But a week later, Teresa told me she woke up feeling lighter. I didn't need her to say anything. I needed to say it to myself. And I did. Sagittarius, sometimes the act of release is more powerful than the act of reunion. You may not control whether someone takes responsibility, but you do control whether that responsibility continues to weigh down your spirit. This week, if someone reappears through a message, a comment, or even a silent moment in passing, meet it with openness. But don't wait for perfect words. Focus on your closure, not theirs. And if no one comes back, if the person who owes you still remains distant or unaware, then let this be the week you realize that you can forgive without hearing "I'm sorry," that you can heal without being seen by them, because you've finally chosen to see yourself. Here's something I invite you to try. Each day this week, say aloud to yourself, I forgive because I am free. I release because I am whole. Repeat it not for magic, but for memory. So your heart remembers that it is not waiting on anyone to live fully. Sagittarius, closing a chapter does not mean erasing what happened. It means no longer rereading it each night, hoping the ending will change. And forgiveness? It's not approval. It's not forgetting. It's the radical decision to no longer carry something that was never yours to begin with. Their silence is not your burden. Their refusal to see you was never your fault. And if that person does reach out, if the words, I'm sorry, finally come, listen, but don't expect repair. Expect release. That is the gift. That is the healing. Not a return to the past, but a surrender to the present, where your soul finally gets to exhale. Sagittarius, you are the truth seeker of the zodiac. But not all truths need to be spoken to be known. Some are simply felt. In the weight that lifts, in the joy that returns, in the way your breath deepens when the past no longer defines your worth. This week is not just about a possible reunion. It's about reunion with yourself. With the fire that was dimmed. With the voice you silenced. With the lightness you thought was lost. And when you forgive, not because they earned it, but because you deserve it, you'll notice something extraordinary. Your future expands. Because your energy is no longer tied to a door that will never open the way you hoped. Instead, you'll find new doors, ones that open with ease, with love, with mutual recognition. The kind of connection you've always deserved but had to make space for. So Sagittarius, close the chapter. Not with bitterness, with reverence. That part of your story shaped you, yes, but it no longer has to steer you. Let this be the week your heart says, I've carried this long enough. And now I choose peace. Gate 3, the soul behind the apology. When karma sends you a mirror, Sagittarius, there is a kind of love that doesn't shout. It doesn't always wear the name romance. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a karmic echo. A connection that once burned, broke, or vanished, and now circles back, not to rekindle passion, but to restore balance. This week, you may feel the presence of a soul who once walked beside you. Perhaps in joy, perhaps in pain, perhaps both. And as life prepares to place you face to face with them, in the physical world or the spiritual one, it's important to understand. This is not coincidence. This is a mirror. Karmic love doesn't always come to stay. Comes to complete. You may receive a message out of nowhere, or meet someone who reminds you of them, so vividly it almost hurts. Or you might simply find yourself dreaming about a person from your past with surprising clarity. That's not nostalgia. That's energy moving. And it's asking to be acknowledged. Because some souls carry unfinished business with ours, not out of cruelty, but because our stories together were never fully told. Sagittarius, your heart has the courage to face these returns. And your spirit has the wisdom to see them not as setbacks, but as sacred checkpoints. Let me tell you about Adrian, a 48-year-old musician from Oregon. Years ago, his first love left without a word. He buried the heartbreak, focused on his work, and told himself he had moved on. But recently, he ran into her at a cafe by complete chance. They spoke for 10 minutes. She told him why she left. She apologized for not being able to face him then. And as she left, Adrian said, "It was like my heart had been holding its breath for 20 years, and in those 10 minutes it finally exhaled." Not all soul encounters are meant to restart. Some are meant to release. And that's what this moment is about. You might not get every answer, but you'll feel something loosen inside you. A knot, a tension, a tight place in your chest that finally softens. That's your soul recognizing. The loop is closing. Sagittarius, this isn't just emotional. It's spiritual. The universe is orchestrating what some mystics call a mirror return. A chance to see the version of you that once hurt, once hoped, once reached out and got silence in return, and to meet it now from a new place. A higher place, a healed place, and perhaps even more profoundly, a forgiving place. Because in the mirror that this soul offers, you may not only see their guilt, but also your own growth. The way you've expanded, the way your love has matured, the way you now know what you deserve. This doesn't mean the other person becomes a villain, or that you become their rescuer. It means that both of you, in your own way, have reached a point in your journey where the soul contract can be completed with grace. If they speak, listen. If they stay silent, still listen. To your own heart. It will tell you everything you need to know. And if the one who returns is not a person but a memory, then meet it like an old friend. Let it speak. Let it weep. And then let it go. Because when karmic energy dissolves, it doesn't disappear, it transforms. Into freedom. Into clarity. Into space for the kind of love that doesn't repeat old wounds, but writes new beginnings. This week, love may not look like roses and promises. It may look like closure, like clarity, like the soft smile you give yourself in the mirror when you realize, I'm not angry anymore. That is spiritual love. Love that transcends attachment. Love that allows without expecting. Love that releases without resentment. Sagittarius, you are being asked to open your heart in a different way now. Not to hold on, but to honor. Honor what was. Honor who you were. Honor the soul who hurt you, not by justifying them, but by recognizing that they were a teacher in disguise. Sometimes love teaches us how to stay. Other times it teaches us how to say goodbye with grace. Whichever form it takes, let your soul be present. You don't need to figure it all out. Just witness what unfolds. Some of the greatest healings happen not in conversations, but in silent moments where two souls simply see each other again. And if this person offers you that long-awaited, I'm sorry, Sagittarius, receive it. Not for them, for you. Because your spirit is ready now. Ready to be free. Ready to love again, not from fear but from fullness. And when you walk away from this soul, whether in forgiveness, in peace, or in quiet understanding, you'll notice something profound. You feel whole again. Not because they fixed anything, but because you chose healing over holding on. This is what spiritual love does. It frees what once confined. It opens what once closed. Gives you back you. Conclusion. You were never waiting in vain. Sagittarius, as we close this journey, I want you to know, what's approaching is not a test, it's a gift. A sacred moment long in the making. A quiet correction of a thread that was left tangled in your heart. Whether the words "I'm sorry" are spoken aloud or whispered in silence, you are ready now to receive what your soul has always deserved. Not just an apology, but peace. Not just closure, but liberation. You've walked through the fire of unresolved emotions. You've learned how to smile through what broke you. You've carried silence like armor. But this week you put it down. Not because you're giving up, but because you're finally free. This isn't about proving you were right. It's about remembering you were always worthy. Worthy of truth. Worthy of softness. Worthy of love that doesn't abandon or disappear when it gets difficult. And so, when this person returns in whatever form they do, meet them from the highest version of yourself. Not the hurt, not the pride, but the peace you've been growing quietly in your own time. And if no one comes, if the moment lives only in your own heart, let that be enough. Sometimes the most powerful reconciliation is the one between who we were and who we've become. Sagittarius, if this message found you, it's because your healing is already unfolding. So share with me in the comments. What part of your story is ready to be released? Your words might become someone else's permission to heal. And if this resonated with your spirit, I invite you to like, subscribe, and stay close to this space. Here at Zodiac Wisdom, we walk the path of the stars with our hearts wide open. Because when we choose forgiveness, we don't lose power. We become light itself.